We're back here on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Now, we're going to look at quarterbacks and running backs on the waiver wire. But first, I thought maybe a little bit of trivia for you guys. Not necessarily who has more, just little trivia as we've reached the halfway point of the NFL, of the regular season here, beyond the halfway point of the fantasy season. Now, there's something called the Scott Fish Bowl. There's about 5,000 people that are in it. It's a big tournament, and we're all in it. You know, a lot of people in CBS have teams in there. Some teams have already clinched a playoff spot. My trivia question for you is, which two CBS analysts are currently doing the best, have the most points in the Scott Fish Bowl?
Me?
It's got to be you.
Is it you too, Adam?
It's not me.
I mean, I do have a lot of points.
I do too. So I'm going to say me and you.
Okay, the correct answer is Frank Stamfel and Chris Towers. They are crushing it.
That's great for them.
Frank is 73rd out of over 5,000 people.
All right.
Dave, you and I also have clinched. We're doing well.
Okay.
All right, Christian McCaffrey, JSN for the win. Okay, so I had this thought, man, I like Michael Penix this week. I think probably more than you guys do. But now they got Sauce Gardner on the other side of the field. So do I have to stop? Do I have to get him out of a lineup in the podcast league? Let's take a look at the waiver wire quarterbacks. He's one of the guys to look at this week. We don't know who the Jets quarterback is going to be. Maybe they'll trade one of them. We'll see. But Marcus Mariota against Detroit is Jamey's favorite. And then it's kind of a weird list, Jamey, because there's a mix of week 9 or 10, right? We're in week 10. Week 10 versus stash. So break it down.
Well, you mentioned Mariota. We don't know how long Jaden Daniels is going to be out. I would guess, just based on the severity of the injury and their bye week being in week 12, you have two very good games coming up for Mariota. This week he gets Detroit, and then next week gets Miami. Those are two of the best matchups you could have, at least based on how those defenses. I know in terms of fantasy points, a little bit different. But Mariota's been good. 2 of 3 games this season where he's been the starter, over 20 fantasy points. I know Terry McLaurin probably going to be out the same amount of time into their bye week at least, so you don't have him for those 2 starts most likely. But with Deebo Samuel, with Zach Ertz, with what he does as a rusher, I think low-end starter at best, not a top 12 guy, but can get you by in a desperate situation, certainly should be added in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues. You mentioned the long-term appeal for Justin Fields and J.J. McCarthy. Well, here's what Fields has in the fantasy playoffs. Week 14, he gets Miami, then Jacksonville, and then New Orleans. That's the first 3 weeks of the playoffs. Very favorable schedule for him. J.J. McCarthy, 2 of 3 starts so far this season. You can make a case the 2 healthy starts because he got hurt in that Falcons game. That's what put him on the shelf for 5 weeks. But 2 healthy games so far this season, over 22 fantasy points. In the fantasy playoffs, first off, he gets Chicago week 11. But in the fantasy playoffs, he gets Washington, Dallas, the Giants, and Detroit. Again, very favorable schedule for him. So I think if you're just looking long-term, Justin Fields, J.J. McCarthy makes some sense. I do think Geno Smith is interesting. Even without Jacoby Myers, it really doesn't matter. In 5 starts that he's made so far this season with Brock Bowers, 3 of those he's been 19.5 fantasy points or more. So even though tough matchup this week against Denver, you don't want to trust him. Next week, he gets Dallas. So if you're just looking for a 1-week scenario here, Jacoby Brissett just had a 3-touchdown game against the Cowboys. They've been miserable against every quarterback they faced. So I think Geno Smith in week 11 could be very useful. I don't really love Michael Penix this week, even with Sauce Gardner without Sauce Gardner on the other side, but I think he could be a potential bye-week replacement in deeper leagues. But 3 games over 20 fantasy points. Everything else has been miserable for him. So he's just too up and down for me, Jekyll and Hyde, to trust. More of a super flex, 2 quarterback league guy. Jacoby Brissett, we'll see if he's a starter, but tough matchup against Seattle. And then you're looking at Davis Mills, deep super flex and 2 quarterback leagues, mostly because C.J. Stroud's in the concussion protocol.
You're saying Penix is Jekyll and Hyde? Is that what you were saying? All right, so I'll just make my case because it's not a great quarterback week, but some of the guys on that list ahead of them, we don't like their week 10 matchups. Now, I did like his week 10 matchup, Michael Penix. Colts are 16th against quarterbacks. Here are the guys who have done well. Bo Nix, Matthew Stafford, Jacoby Brissett, Justin Herbert. Here are the guys who have struggled against the Colts. Tua, Cam Ward twice, Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers. I'd like to think that Penix is somewhere in between those 2 groups. He's better than Cam Ward, obviously. I think he's probably better than Aaron Rodgers. He's not Justin Herbert. He's not Stafford. He's not Bo Nix. But he's kind of a good thrower, right? I mean, he just kind of gets in this rhythm. He's just firing the ball around the field. Drake London's making plays for him. He was so close to having that second touchdown against Buffalo, right before the first half ended. Drake London just didn't quite get in. And then his game log looks a lot better. So I know that he's got the potential to just throw up a clunker like he did at Carolina, but I think he's playing pretty well lately. And I think the Colts are, against the Colts, you usually get a lot of pass attempts because the Colts are so high scoring. So, Dave, do you buy my argument at all? And how much does the Sauce Gardner trade change that if you do buy the argument?
I don't buy the argument. The Sauce Gardner trade is significant because there's a very real chance that Lou Anarumo goes to Sauce Gardner and says, the very first thing you're going to do is line up against Drake London everywhere he goes. And you might make the argument that the Patriots did the exact same thing last week with Christian Gonzalez, and there were moments in that game where Atlanta actually schemed up London nicely to get away from Christian Gonzalez, specifically in the end zone. They drew some great matchups there. I think the Colts can avoid that. I think the Colts can get Gardner one-on-one with London for the majority of the game. I'm still going to start Drake London, but it makes me nervous about Michael Penix. I'm worried about the upside. I'm worried about the clunker game that you're talking about. He had one several weeks ago. There's not as much upside with him, and there's some worry with him. And when it comes to the quarterback position, when we're talking about 1 QB leagues, I want quarterbacks that have at least that safe floor and the sky-high ceiling. And not that J.J. McCarthy has a sky-high ceiling, nor does McCarthy have an easy matchup against Baltimore, but I was really impressed with how he played last week against the Lions. They got after him like crazy. The Ravens will not be able to get after him. They do not have a good pass rush. It's going to be a big week for J.J. McCarthy. He's my favorite quarterback to pick up off the waiver wire, not just for this week, but against Chicago the week after. Late in the year, he's got a great schedule. I'm encouraged by how he operated and how this Vikings offense operated, and I think he could potentially keep it up. If I'm streaming quarterbacks, the first name on my list will be McCarthy.
Let's see if we're streaming running backs, what we're looking at on the waiver wire this week.
I hope not, because this list is brutal.
Yeah, not great. So Devin Singletary, Terrell Jennings. We don't know the status of Ramondre Stevenson, but Jennings was the physical up-the-gut rusher who also scored a rushing touchdown for New England. Tampa Bay, pretty good run defense. Tank Bigsby and Dylan Sampson are contingent on the health of Saquon Barkley and Quinshon Judkins, respectively. Judkins was practicing on Monday. Isaiah Davis, we're waiting to see if Breece Hall gets traded, but even if he doesn't, Isaiah Davis is still a handcuff. Basil Tootin got some more work and got some work near the goal line last week, and then there's always Brian Robinson Jr. Dave, yeah, you're not too thrilled with this list?
I do not want to prioritize any of these names unless I am completely desperate for a running back because I've got guys on bye or guys hurt or what have you. Singletary would be at the top of the list. And honestly, I'm just hoping that he gets me 7 PPR points. I'm hoping any of these guys get me 7 PPR points. I can't have high expectations for any of them because I'm not sure how many touches they're going to get, not sure how much they're going to work, not sure if there's another running back that's going to end up impacting them and their opportunities. That's really in the case of Bigsby and Dylan Sampson. We already know that Quinshon Judkins has already practiced this week. That hurts Dylan Sampson. And then if these names are not going to be appealing, the next best names are guys like Devin Neal in New Orleans, Jeremy McNichols in Washington. Yeah, I don't like these guys. I don't like this list. I don't want to start any of these running backs if I can help it.
Yeah, Jamey, obviously I did my waiver claims in preparation of the show. Right now I have to go check, make sure Trey Tucker's not available in any of the leagues. Yeah, well, I already checked for Jacoby Myers. I forgot to check for Trey Tucker. But one guy that's on a few of my rosters that I wasn't quite sure what to do with was Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight. Horrible usage last night other than being what looked like the goal line back. We don't know if Benson's going to come back. So obviously if we heard, Benson's coming back this week, it'd be easy to just cut bait. But for people who have waivers run on Tuesday night, they may not know. So that list of running backs, would you drop Bam Knight for any of them? And follow-up question, interested in picking up Amari DiMercato, who got 2/3 of the carries last night?
I guess if you want to try and pivot from one Cardinals running back to the other with the thought that Benson doesn't come back, and let's face it, one of the most difficult matchups that we have on the table when you're talking about facing Seattle. So I don't want to trust any of them. But if we find out, okay, Jonathan Gannon says, yeah, Benson's just not ready to go. Yeah, it's going to be another week, which could be multiple weeks on top of this. Then you might want to pivot to DiMercato. But prior to their bye week, it was Knight doing the majority of the work. DiMercato works his way back in, had a very smart play to stay in bounds, which Jonathan Gannon, if you watch the game, was very fired up about. So they clearly might be pivoting to DiMercato at this point. I just think it's going to be a mess. I think we'll see multiple running backs, at least 2. I was surprised Michael Carter didn't get a lot of opportunities last night either. But I think if you're looking at it just from the standpoint of no Benson, DiMercato is probably the way you want to go. I would drop Knight for Singletary just in case. That's Brian Daboll's guy. He was with him in Buffalo. Maybe the running back that they decide to lean on more so than Tyrone Tracy with Scatterbu out.
All right, when we come back, how has the wide receiver waiver wire priority changed since the trades that went down earlier this afternoon? We'll tell you when we come back. You've got a trade to tell you about. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to the Bears, you said?
Yep.
Okay, to the Bears for a late round pick. So going from Cleveland to Chicago. And not exactly fantasy relevant, but helps the Bears. All right, welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. We're going to look at waiver wire wide receivers. We were all excited about Parker Washington, and maybe we still could be, Jamey. What are we thinking about the guy who had been number one on your priority list?
Yeah, I'll probably reshuffle the list after everything is settled by 4 o'clock. But I think in terms of Washington, I still don't mind trying to acquire him for this week. You're talking about Jakobi Meyers coming in the middle of the week, having to adjust to a new quarterback. He's been very targeted in terms of Washington, 3 of the last 4 games, certainly the last 2, 19 targets in the last 2 games. You have potentially 3 wide receiver injuries for Jacksonville. Hunter's on IR for 3 more games. Brian Thomas may be dealing with a high ankle sprain, and Diami Brown's in the concussion protocol. This is the guy that Trevor Lawrence is going to lean on. And I don't think we're going to see him challenged on the outside with Myers or even Washington. I think Washington will probably line up a little bit more inside. So I think that gives him a better chance in this week's matchup against Houston. The upcoming schedule is brutal for Jacksonville. So I think Washington, just knowing that Lawrence may have to get the ball out quick, is someone that still may see 7+ targets. I think Myers can also get there. But at least on a 1-week situation, I'm going to take Washington as the best Jacksonville wide receiver, and then Myers will eventually replace him. And by that point, we may see Thomas back on the field and Hunter as well.
Okay, so other wide receivers that we're interested in this week. After Washington, Torrey Horton was another guy, but not so much now. The Colts wide receivers.
Yep.
Do you think Sauce Gardner will? No.
Shadow them in practice? Yes.
What do you think about these guys? Do you prefer Downs or Pierce? And then they've got, unfortunately, Falcons, bye, Chiefs, Texans. All of those teams are top 7 against wide receivers and a bye week mixed in there. But thoughts on the Colts, guys?
Yeah, I wouldn't invest much in either one of them because of the schedule. And if either one or both have a bad game against Atlanta, you're not going to want to carry them through their bye week. Consequently, if they end up having a great game against Atlanta, then you might be interested in carrying them through the bye week. I like Downs better. I think Daniel Jones is going to be focused on getting the ball out quick when he's under pressure, and he's done that a lot this year already. The Colts have a lot of teams with some good pass rushes coming up, and that's going to be something that could be troubling for Daniel Jones. And we already know that Alec Pierce, great downfield receiver, but the targets aren't like they were in week number 9. Usually he gets like 5 or fewer targets in a game, and there's at least some upside for Downs to get 6+ targets from game to game. So I do like Downs better, especially in half and full PPR, compared to Alec Pierce. That's in redraft, and that's in the short term. Long term, I think Alec Pierce is making a case for himself to get paid and maybe be another team's number 1 or number 2 wide receiver starting in 2026. So if you're in a keeper league and you have the chance to go and stash Alec Pierce, maybe he ends up turning into gold, not necessarily this year, but next year.
I think his ADOT has been over 20 yards every game. It's insane. Alec Pierce is like just a downfield guy, but he makes the most of it. He's not going to get a ton of catches, but the yards, 501 yards in 7 games. That's really, really impressive. Mm-hmm. When I just told you earlier in the show, if you missed it, Jakobi Meyers and Brian Thomas Jr. aren't even on pace for 900 yards, and this guy's on pace for well over 1,000. All right, so the waiver wire has really changed quite a bit with the trade of Jakobi Meyers to Jacksonville, which hurts Parker Washington. But even if we're repeating some information from earlier, Jamey, what do you think now about if Jakobi Meyers were on waivers, if Trey Tucker were on waivers, Rashid Shaheed? Who's the priority now?
For me, it would be Tucker. He almost caught a touchdown last week. He got a pass interference call in the end zone. He's been good at times this season. Certainly, we've seen a spike in targets for him. And now we get to see what this Raiders offense looks like with a healthy Brock Bowers. So Dave mentioned it. We'll see Jack Besh get some opportunities, maybe Deontay Thornton as well. I think Besh is the one that benefits the most because he was kind of considered as the replacement option for, or at least the eventual replacement option for Jakobi Meyers. But I think just looking at it, Meyers could be awesome in Jacksonville. He also could be the 3rd receiver by the time everybody's healthy in a couple of weeks. So I just don't want to overvalue him. I think short-term he could be good. Long-term we'll just have to wait and see. In the case of Trey Tucker, though, we're going to see this team probably chasing points quite a bit and having to throw a lot, and I think that's going to benefit him hopefully for the rest of the season as they pivot toward what's their future, and he's only a third-year wide receiver here. So in the case of the guys that you mentioned, and to put it out there, Rashid Shaheed, 76% rostered. Trey Tucker, 68% rostered. I know Myers is a little bit ahead of that, so he's in the low 80s, but I would prioritize Tucker ahead of Shaheed and ahead of Myers personally.
Dave, we have a couple of teams that have good passing games and injuries to their receivers, Tampa Bay and Green Bay. And we've got Christian Watson available in about 30 or 35% of leagues. Tez Johnson's available in more than 35% of leagues. Kate Otten, we could throw into discussion as well, though we'll talk about that next segment. Chris Godwin is another guy who's available in about 30% of leagues. What do you think about Green Bay and Tampa Bay?
I like the Tampa Bay guys better because I think that there's going to be more opportunities. That's a team that likes to throw. And right now they've been struggling to run the ball. Eventually Bucky Irving will come back and hopefully have a better rushing average than he did before he got hurt. So I would trust in Baker before I would trust in Jordan Love. And I like what I've seen from Tez Johnson, and I don't think he's leaving the field anytime soon. Chris Godwin is a huge question mark. We know what he's capable of doing based on the past, but we don't know how healthy he'll be, how elusive he'll be. He's played really only 2 games this year. Looked like different guys in both games. His first game back, he looked good. Second game back, he did not look good, and then he was on the injury list. So I would be nervous about acquiring Godwin. I do like Tez Johnson as somebody who could be a good downfield threat, much in the same way that Christian Watson has been for Green Bay. And he's had 1 good game and 1 bad game so far this season for fantasy managers. Would I take Watson over Tez Johnson? I don't know if I would. I still think Romeo Doubs is going to be the top target getter in Green Bay. I still think Green Bay wants to run the football a lot. And I think that there's something to be said with how they'll replace Tucker Kraft. And they can do that with guys like Luke Musgrave. Jaden Reed's eventually going to be back. So put me down as a vote for Tez Johnson as somebody that I would consider picking up. Maybe not with my first or second waiver claim, but maybe my third or fourth.
Jamey, imagine if Darius Slayton had a touchdown in 2 straight games, which has been very, very close to happening. He's 30% rostered. He's facing the Bears. They're 29th against wide receivers. They've given up the second most completions of 20 or more air yards. Is there a case to be made that he should be near the top of the list, Darius Slayton?
He definitely will be when I reshuffle this. I think you're looking at a player, like you said, had he got those 2 touchdowns, certainly the one 2 games ago where, ticky-tack pass interference call. We had the first game without Cam Scatterbo, and the run game was terrible, suffered. And we saw, a little bit more on Jackson Dart and the receivers really having to step up. So you see what this receiving core is right now, again, barring a trade. So you have Slayton, Wandale, and Theo Johnson as these guys that, Jackson Dart is leaning on. I don't mind Darius Slayton at all. I think there's a lot of good number 3 wide receivers on this list, and he's definitely one of them based on, remember, when Malik Neighbors first got hurt, I know for me it was go get Darius Slayton. And then he had the concussion, I think it was a concussion, missed 2 games, and now he's making plays for Jackson Dart like I thought he was going to make. So we've seen it every time Neighbors has been off the field in the last 2 seasons. We saw it previously when other guys were missing. Like, he's just been a good fill-in, and now hopefully we'll start to make those plays and we start to benefit from having Darius Slayton on our roster.
All right, I'm going to finish with this. I'm just going to give you guys some names, and I want you to tell me, are they more of an add, more of a drop, or more of a hold? It's a little bit of a difficult question, but hopefully we'll figure it out. Add, drop, hold. Matthew Golden.
Drop.
I think he's a drop, unfortunately.
Add, drop, hold. Juwan Jennings.
Hold.
Hold or add.
Ricky Pearsall, 85% rostered.
Hold for sure.
Hold for now. If he's out another week, why they didn't put him on IR makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Cooper Kupp.
Drop.
More of a drop than a hold.
Jerry Jeudy.
You should have dropped him a month ago.
All right, one more. Sleeper. Darnell Mooney.
Should have dropped him 2 weeks ago.
Drop.
Why is he a sleeper, though? Because teams that play Sauce Gardner, it's always that number 2 receiver. But okay, hard to trust. All right, let's take a look at tight ends. We will do, Chimere DK, add, drop, hold.
You can drop him. I still like the talent, though, but you could probably get him back next week if you wanted.
Drop him. Tight ends, when we come back, we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. We'll tell you how to prioritize Harold Fannin Jr., David Njoku, Juwan Johnson, Dalton Schultz. Up next. It is the year of the tight end, and there are more good ones on waivers. Every week, basically, we have good options for you. And we have the Tucker Kraft situation, so Luke Musgrave is going to be on this list, but it does seem like there's a possibility the Packers go out and acquire a tight end. Anyway, here's a look at our waiver wire priorities, starting with Harold Fannin Jr., who is 61% rostered. He is at the Jets this week. They've allowed 6 touchdowns to opposing tight ends. Then he gets Baltimore and Las Vegas. Not the greatest schedule on paper. Colston Loveland, so good last week, and maybe gets another chance with Kmet banged up right now. Cade Otton, David Njoku, Luke Musgrave, Dalton Schultz, Mason Taylor, and Juwan Johnson. So first question, Jamey, Juwan Johnson, after reconsidering now with the Rashid Shaheed trade, Juwan Johnson would be where?
A little bit higher, probably above Musgrave. I think when you look at the guys Fannin through Njoku, you can feel pretty confident about what they're capable of doing, just what we've seen, what their offenses look like, what their roles are. In the case of Musgrave, huge bump, but still Packers can acquire a tight end, and there's clearly a reason why he was number 2 on the list. Dalton Schultz, Davis Mills, Nico Collins still going to be there, Christian Kirk coming back. I just don't know if we're going to get back to that 8 to 8.5 point range, or will we see what we saw in 2 of the last 3 games from him. Mason Taylor, did he just get the Bengals bump, and now there's another mouth to feed in the Jets offense, plus they have a really tough matchup against the Browns this week. So I think in the case of Juwan Johnson, last week, somewhat encouraging because he scored a touchdown, but was the first time that he's been in double digits in PPR without getting at least 7 targets. I think you could probably confidently say he's going to get in that 7-target range on a consistent basis right now. So, yes, Juwan Johnson definitely gets a boost.
Dave, your thoughts on the tight end waiver wire list?
I think it's good, and I think it's especially good not only if you just lost Tucker Kraft, but if you've been starting Jake Ferguson, Travis Kelce. We know those guys are on bye, so you need to find somebody to replace them in Week 10. And it's a chance for you to upgrade from somebody like TJ Hawkinson. I know Hawkinson just caught a touchdown last week, but other tight ends, Zach Ertz, they might be disappointing. This is your chance to upgrade, and I think a lot of these tight ends are exactly that. These are also players that could fill in as a flex. They're getting enough targets. They've got enough points, at least in full PPR, where they can help you without necessarily filling your tight end slot. So if you've got Brock Bowers on your team, or you've got Trey McBride on your squad, and you're good to go with those guys, but you're a little thin at wide receiver, you don't have to fret. You can go to one of these tight ends. I like Fannin the best of the bunch. I think he's only going to continue to develop and get more playing time and more opportunities. We know that the Browns aren't going to throw the ball downfield very much. So as long as David Njoku's there, I think he's good too. I just like Fannin a little bit more. And Colston Loveland, even without the yards after the catch and the touchdown last week, 7 targets, 6 catches, 85 yards. That's awesome for a tight end. Just a lot of mouths to feed in Chicago, so I'd be a little bit nervous about how he'd be moving forward, but I don't mind speculating on him, including this week against the Giants. Cole Kmet might not play. It's a secondary that's beat up right now, and we've seen Loveland see an uptick in playing time, routes run, targets. It's been good. You can trust him as a top 12 tight end.
Okay, I really like Otton, but a little cautious there because he's only played 2 games with Chris Godwin playing and Mike Evans not playing, and Ibuka obviously playing. And he's only had 4 targets and 5 targets in those 2 games. He scored 3.9 fantasy points against Philadelphia. Terrible matchup, scored 12.1 at Seattle. But Otton has a really good track record when Mike Evans is not playing. He's usually really good. And he only had 40 yards in their last game, but it was a very low pass volume game for Baker Mayfield.
And lost a touchdown.
Yeah, right. He was so close to scoring in that game.
You're right. Before that, he had scored double-digit fantasy points in 3 straight games, and he scored 8 in that game. So anyway, Mike Evans out is usually good for Otton, but I know Tampa Bay is just tricky. It's just confusing right now. Dave, you talked about Loveland being a lot of mouths to feed. Do either of you think, though, that this is the start of a Rondé Gadsden-like second half? Because there's a lot of mouths to feed in Los Angeles, but Gadsden was absolutely worth it, and I was wrong about that. I missed out on Gadsden after his blow-up week for this exact reason. I was like, there's too many mouths to feed. I'm not picking him up, and I was wrong. I made a big mistake. I don't know that I want to risk that again with the first tight end taken in this draft class in Colston Loveland.
So the first thing that I think about is the Chargers don't have a good run game right now. The Bears do. And so because the Chargers kind of have to throw the ball a lot each week, that helps the passing volume. That helps Gadsden get a bunch of targets. So that worries me a little bit for Colson Loveland. The fact that Cole Kmet can come back and muck things up at the tight end position and maybe even take Loveland off the field, and then he doesn't run as many routes, that makes me a little bit nervous about Colson Loveland as well. So I don't see him as somebody that can have a Gadsden-like move. I'm just going to take it week to week with him. And it's a good matchup this week. We don't know if DeAndre Swift's going to play for whatever that's worth. He's also not playing Cincinnati. Giants aren't that much better than Cincinnati, but at least they've got a pass rush. And the quarterback situation, obviously that's a huge difference between Oronde Gadsden and Colson Loveland. So rest of season, I'd still rather have Gadsden, but it doesn't mean that I'm not interested in acquiring Loveland as one of the top 3 tight ends and maybe even one of the 3 top players to pick up off waivers this week.
And finally, guys, what are our expectations for Luke Musgrave?
I mean, look, he was good as a rookie when Tucker Kraft was dealing with injuries. Jordan Love is clearly better at this point in his career, so we'll see if this becomes the go-to guy in the passing game. He's not as good as Tucker Kraft, otherwise he would be playing more. But you have Matthew Golden dealing with a shoulder injury. You have Dontavian Wicks has been out, and now you have this big piece missing in Tucker Kraft. And so unless they're going to completely overhaul their offense and start giving Christian Watson an accelerated timetable, they were being cautious with him coming back from the knee injury. So, playing time's been limited, 4 targets each of the last 2 weeks. I think Musgrave has a chance to be a version of Tucker Kraft. What version that is, we'll find out. But, can be a low-end starter for you. So if you miss on a lot of these guys because people are fighting for it, remember Kelsey's on a bye, Jake Ferguson's on a bye, you're missing some top-tier tight ends because of, not being able to use them this week. I think there's a chance for Musgrave to see what happens, especially if they don't make a trade. So, there's a rumor that the Packers are looking at Michael Mayer. You could see a Chico Conco or maybe even a David Njoku get traded, and Green Bay's one of the best destinations you can find for that position. But if they go with Musgrave with the idea that he's the Tucker Kraft replacement, Matt LaFleur talked him up after the injury, there's a chance for him to be a low-end fantasy starter with maybe more just based on Tucker Kraft, what he was giving you.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell people, since no one asked, I have Tucker Kraft in one league, and I've been offered Juwan Johnson for my Woody Marks. Woody Marks is just a bench piece for me. And I thought about it, but then I looked at the waiver wire, and I just said, there are too many tight ends that might be close to as good, and I don't have to give up Woody Marks to get him. So I said, let me see who I get on waivers. It's actually fab, and, we'll revisit. I don't think it's a horrible trade offer. I think Juwan Johnson's going to be all right, but it's just a deep enough position on waivers where you don't have to do anything desperate if you lost Tucker Kraft. All right, we'll be right back with your questions on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Yeah, I try to make it legendary every day. That's why I'm proposing this rule change, and Rick kind of agrees with me. I don't know about this whole 1st and 15 thing, but guys, you see, we have some smart listeners out there. They know a good rule when they see one.
You can listen to our podcast for more on this, or actually just listen to the podcast, but skip over the part where Adam has a rule change for a penalty. Personal foul penalties.
Okay. Do we have any question? We can talk about this the rest of the show, but if we have any actual questions.
I got to go if we're going to talk about that for the rest of the show.
Oh, boy. Drop Kittle for Fannin?
No.
I can't do that. I still believe in George Kittle, especially once Brock Purdy comes back, which might be this week.
Yeah, listen, you've got Kittle and Fannin. Maybe look at that Tucker Kraft manager, see if you can make a trade. If Brian Thomas Jr. and Kupp are both out for an extended time, by the way, we just got a report from Adam Schefter that BTJ might play this week. Mm-hmm. Torrey Horton or Parker Washington, who would you rather have?
This has changed quite a bit. We talked about it on the show today. Washington would be the preferred one of the two, but expectations should be lowered, at least long term.
Yep, Washington.
All right. Okay, QB Purgatory, probably better than QB Hell. Do I trade for Jared Goff or grab a streamer like Penix, Lawrence, Young, Geno, or Cardinals quarterback?
I mean, that's so bad that you're in a 10-team league and this is what you're dealing with. I would probably try to make a trade for Goff. It's not going to cost you much, just because much better situation than any of these guys that are on waivers, and great matchup against Washington.
Shouldn't cost you much of anything either. Goff is one of the easiest quarterbacks to trade for. Should cost you a bench player at most. If you can't pull the trade off, I'd go Penix this week and then Flacco moving forward.
You should be able to get
Rest of-
Mariota, though. I like Mariota better than Penix.
Derrick Henry or Breece Hall rest of season?
I mean, at nearly 2 p.m., I would say Derrick Henry, but that could change if Breece Hall goes to the Chiefs.
Right.
Yeah. All right, next up, one more. Okay, PPR, one of those two guys. I have a feeling this was
Sunday night.
Yeah, it's a Sunday night question. Hope
yeah.
we started Charbonnet.
Yeah, you'll be starting Charbonnet rest of the way.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody. That's going to do it for Fantasy Football Today. If you like the show, please check out the Fantasy Football Today podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. I want to thank Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg. Of course, thanks a lot to all of you for watching today. I'm Adam Aizer. Good luck in Week 10. We'll see you later.